automation is becoming a big thing in some of the larger factories. And here at Dancing Fireworks, they've got the whole tube making process completely automated. So here we have the tube rolling machine where the cardboard is coming off the roll, glue is being applied, and the rolls are being pressed together. It then gets chopped up into individual tube sections and they come off looking like this. Now normally this takes days to completely dry out, but here they've got a large kiln which we'll have a look at next. The wet tubes come up the conveyor belt and into this, and it's basically a long oven. And they move along a conveyor belt on the inside, and it takes about 10 minutes to dry those tubes out completely before they can go to the next stage, which is putting the clay bung in the bottom of the tubes. They go through a hatch at the far end of the warehouse here, and there's a press that puts in the clay in the bottom, compresses it together, and that is your completed individual tube. So those finished tubes then come through to the next stage, which is the bundling stage. This is kind of building the basics of the cake. So you can see the bundles going into the hopper there. They're fed through to an enormous sewing machine which punches holes in the bottom of the tubes and then feeds through the time delay fuse. And the time delay fuse is really important. We've got an example of a finished empty cake here. This machine will actually stitch them all together and then sellotape them together. And this is a really nice example because you can see where the delay fuse goes between the individual tubes. So this one would fire first, then this one would fire a few seconds later, and so on. And it does that right the way around the cake. And also on the bottom here, that's actually nice and clear, you can see the clay bungs. So at the moment these tubes are empty. The next stage of manufacturing will be to put the lift charge in and then the units on top. What you're seeing here is possibly the future of cake loading. This is an automatic cake filling machine. So the empty cases, those tubes I showed you, come along the conveyor belt. The lift charge, the black powder that is used to push the inside, is automatically loaded in this hopper here. The cake then moves to this machine, which adds the first cardboard disc. That's to keep the lift charge separate from the actual unit that's going in. So you can see the card has been punched out here. Then the really magical bit is this machine here. This is the machine that actually loads the units into each of the cake tubes. Now this block here is already loaded. It gets loaded from that hopper in there with these. This is an actual live cake unit. So what you're looking at here, this is the effect that's going to be shoot up into the sky and then explode and give out all the stars. And you can see on it the little delay charge. That black powder around the edge is what we call the primer. That's what allows the fuse to get started very quickly. And there's also a little bit of star composition. So as this one goes up, it's going to create a colour as it rises in the sky. In fact, I think that one is possibly a little crackling tail as it goes up. So this is in this block here. That just sits like that. Put it in that one. And then the block comes down, loads that into the cake. So the cake now has its units in. The final stage of the process is another disc on top. So there's another disc cutter to push the cardboard discs into the tube, and that finishes off the cake loading process. Completely automated. Whereas the old way of doing it would have needed somewhere between 10 and 15 people. This just requires 3 technicians to keep an eye on the machine and can process up to 400 cakes every single hour. I feel a bit like I'm in a brick factory. I am surrounded by these things that look a bit like breeze blocks, but actually, could this be the future of cake making? Well, certainly for the home market in China it is. Come and have a look at this, because these are composite blocks. They're made out of a sort of paper, cardboard, mache type thing and cooked in an oven. But what you end up with is a block looking like this. So instead of being made up of individual tubes which are then stuck together, it's a block that's formed with the tubes already in it. So this is a 25-shot cake, and in the bottom what they do is they can weave the fuse through and then glue it in place. So the fuse actually goes around on the bottom. Now, I've been asking the Chinese why they prefer this. Well, first of all, it's much quicker to make. It takes about 10 minutes to form in the oven, and then it just needs to cool down and dry fully. And the second thing is, they like the fact that it's really smooth on the outside, so that when you put the labels on it, from a marketing point of view, it actually gives it a really nice finish. They really do pay a lot of attention to how their finished fireworks look. You'll be familiar with fireworks selection boxes in the UK and elsewhere around the world, but one thing that struck me is the attention to detail on the presentation. This is a government-style presentation box, so for big corporate events and government events. Here it is. Just look at the artwork, but also look at the thickness and the artwork that's on the inside and the way the different materials have been laid out. I've never seen anything quite like this before. It's amazing. A fantastic week, and I'm really pleased now that we're actually on a fireworks site and we actually get to see a firework display tonight. But not any old firework display. This is a new concept in China, what we're about to see. It's what we would call in the UK a pack, for example a wedding pack or a birthday pack. So it's a pre-designed show, because what the Chinese are trying to do now is spend more money on smaller displays so they can spread out the fireworks more across the country rather than having great big displays. So we're really fortunate to be on site now with the Chinese, seeing how they rig the display, and they're even showing us some new equipment, reusable ignition systems. So it's really, really interesting. This firing system uses glow plates which clip onto the end of the match leaders.